What's up, everybody? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I am back again with yet another collection update. I'm kind of blasting through a whole bunch of stuff that I got, just before we get down to year-end lists. And once again, I got another batch with some newer releases. This one's a little bit more mixed up. Got some reissues in there, plus some stuff from the Metalhead box, which also counts as new releases too. I think there's even some random pickups in here. Anyway, got another batch for you. Let's just get right down to it. And we're going to kick off with Morbid Stench, The Rotting Ways of Doom. This is the second album from this El Salvadorian / Costa Rican band. I guess I probably could have just said international band because that definitely counts. Another one that I saw in a distro, I jammed a little bit of it and it was like kind of just instantly in my wheelhouse. This is deathdoom / death metal. I would say it favors more of the deathdoom sound. It's sludgy, it's monotonous. It kind of sits in an interesting spot though in terms of like the kind of deathdoom it is. This has elements of, that very peaceful sound where it's a little bit more melodic and I would say like kind of gothic. Like My Dying Bride, obviously Paradise Lost. But it also has like the fiercely sludgy, just like super oppressive sound of, Hooded Menace, a, giant-sized incantation breakdown, Disma. Songs like Macabre Introspection, Eclipsis, not sure about that one. Darkening Osmosis. You got big, gigantic, massive doomy riffs, but a lot of like just creepy melodies. Like they go from like actual like tuneful guitar harmonies, like just the general woeful stuff that you would hear again in like straightforward death doom. But there's a lot of that like just really unsettling like atonal stuff that you would associate with like disembowelment, spectral voice, evoking. Iconoclast Reverberations and Eclipsis, however the hell you say that one, both have those and they are just absolutely chilling. The production here is also amazing too. It really lends itself to the big cavernous sound. The guitars are huge. I like that the cleaner tones have like a really good amount of reverb on them. The vocals are kind of interesting. They're not like your standard cavernous howls. They do have a lot of reverb, but honestly, kind of sounds a bit like Frozen Soul, and then I guess by extension a little bit like Bolt Thrower. They're pretty clear and they're more just like a straightforward death metal delivery, but that honestly works pretty well because this isn't all slow and monotonous. There are faster points where you get some D beats, even some blast beats, and you get like some heftier, chuggier riffs, even some tremolos, like on Slowly Walking Through the Darkness. Big Morbid Angel-esque tremolos on there. There's even some strange drum work on here where I feel like, it's like deliberately off time, like you get this weird off time hi-hat. I believe it's on Iconoclast Reverberations or Darkening Osmosis. It just kind of lends itself more to that just like weird unsettling sound because it's during a whole point where you get those like just creepy clean harmonies. I don't know. I know I dig this though. This kind of cruises over a lot of different camps of death doom I like. You get the creepy atonal stuff, you get the more melodic stuff, you get the straight up more like death metal leaning stuff. It's just a really solid album. If you're a big fan of like, early Paradise Lost, early My Dying Bride, Hooded Menace, Rathatus is kind of close to this too. Evoking Spectral Voice. Check this out, pretty damn good. Benediction, Transcend the Rubicon. This is the third album from this UK death metal institution, I would say. Among one of my favorite UK death metal bands. Honestly, this is one of my favorite, UK death metal albums, period. I might even take this over some Bolt Thrower albums. Now, this is the 2022 Back on Black reissue. I already own this album on a 2-disc set that includes The Dreams You Dread, and literally it's the same remaster. Like I compared the two, like it sounds like dead nuts the same, but I just wanted one where I had like just the solo version of this. So this wasn't the most necessary purchase, but I love this album and that's kind of all the justification I really needed. And honestly, I'd probably get the other ones that I'm missing like a solo version of because I think I have Subconscious Terror and the Grand Leveler on a 2-disc set. I already have an older version of the Grand Leveler, but I don't have like a lone copy of Subconscious Terror, so I don't know, I might get that just to have solo copies of each. As a collector, I feel like I'm remiss in my duties as a collector if I don't make up bullshit excuses to continuously buy the same fucking albums. Either way, if you have never heard this album, this is an absolute classic in terms of old school death metal. Personally, I think it's their best album. Grand Leveler's pretty damn close to, and I love the last two albums as well. Dave Ingram, I think, has one of the coolest voices in death metal still. We got to see him this year at MDF, and they absolutely fucking crushed. But yeah, 90s death metal. If you've never listened to this, this is one you need to listen to. Absolutely amazing album. I really don't need to talk much more about it because I think most people know it, but if you have not listened to it, strongly recommend checking out. This is just absolutely incredible. Cancer Void. First, Metastasis. This is the debut EP from this Czech death metal act. I heard a fair amount of hype from, a litany of people that I know on Facebook and some fellow YouTubers as well. I knew it was old school death metal. That means it pretty much has its foot in the door for me already. First off, I gotta say, I like the band picture on the back, especially the guy just putting his sunglasses on like he forgot he was supposed to wear them for this shoot. It looks like they caught him that perfect, oh shit, I gotta put on my sunglasses for this picture, and it didn't blur out, so props there. But yeah, this is just some grimy, rotten, riffy, groove-laden, old-school death metal. Solid production. It's not like super cavernous. In fact, it's like a little bit more compressed than I'm kind of used to, at least in terms of the drums. Guitars, big, sludgy, lots of just hefty tremolo riffs. A lot of like creepy melodies on here. Like in terms of solos, there's not too much, and generally it's like kind of like some dive bombs and shit, which are always fine. But in terms of like melodies to complement the main riffs, really solid. They're very creepy, very dingy sounding. They sound like this album cover looks. That's kind of like the best way I could really put it. You do get some interesting atmosphere, namely in the introduction, which is just straight up horror sense, very Fabio Frizzi, like, you know, a Fulci film-esque. And then the interlude, simply titled Interlude. The melodies are just different. Then one feels like you're like kind of floating in the cosmic ether or something like that. And it's kind of a tale of like two halves, because after the introduction, the first two songs, Breeding Pyramids and Encased in Veins, those two are definitely more groove-laden, a little bit more lumbering, like good chuggy fucking riffs and breakdowns in there. And then after the interlude, Ammonia Baths and Cosmic Caverns of Extinction, those two songs are notably more up-tempo, like a little bit thrashy at points. There's even some blast beats, I believe, that show up. But Cosmic Caverns of Extinction has like probably the heaviest moment on here. The last transition into that big death doom breakdown. There's even a cool isolated drum and bass section that builds it up. Absolutely fucking gross. But yeah, this is a solid EP, and you know, I still have an EP list to make for the end of the year too. And this reminded me of a lot of bands I already like Creeping Death, Ruin, definitely some Incantation vibes too. And yeah, this is pretty damn solid. A little bit over 20 minutes. It's not super long, but I would say all the songs are pretty solid, and even the intro and interlude, they actually did contribute something to the atmosphere, which was pretty fucking gross and dingy on here. So yeah, if you like any of the bands I brought up, plus, I mean, God, a little bit of like Cerebral Rot or Corpus Awful too, check this out. Damn good. Fleshcrawl, Structures of Death. This is the 8th album from this German death metal act. Originally known as Morgoth for a little bit, and then they had to change their name because there was already a German Morgoth. Then they changed their name to Suffocation, and obviously that one didn't work out very well, so they became Fleshcrawl, and for the longest time, I thought this band was Swedish just because this is just ferocious HM2 death metal. And honestly, they kind of come from like a sect of German death metal bands that sound a fuckload like Swedish death metal bands. Naturally, that's not an issue for me. I love HM2 death metal. I got to see these guys in 2019. And I believe, sadly, not too long after that, their frontman passed, which they have a new frontman. And I'm kind of hoping this band resurfaces soon because they had an excellent live performance. And this is just, again, straight up old school, very Stockholm sounding death metal. I will say, like, in terms of like the bands they emulate, I would say they kind of go for more of the melodic ones. So there's a lot more that I would compare to like Dismember, Desultory, or Evocation, rather than like Entombed, which was like a little bit more raw. Not saying they weren't melodic at all, but those three bands I mentioned, I feel like they had more melodic hooks. Like, you know, Dismember always had those like big Iron Maiden harmonies. This band definitely goes after that. The vocals are very similar to Maddie or LG, honestly. The guitars, which, I mean, if it's HM2 death metal, it's like kind of the most important part. They sound like they are just absolutely sizzling against your fucking eardrums, like pan-fried fucking buzzsaw. It's a very crisp production overall. It doesn't feel particularly warm, but it's fucking heavier than hell. And musically, I mean, yeah, if you've listened to any of the bands that I've brought up, you've definitely heard this style before. You know, it's nothing really new, but it is well executed. There's a good balance of like faster, more like D-beat and blast beat driven songs like the title track, Flesh Cult, Into the Crypts of Scattered Souls. Riff-wise, I think melody is employed really well, because these songs are very catchy, honestly. Like, there's a lot of good melodic harmonies and just good catchy riffs. Like Rest in Pain, absolutely fucking catchier than hell song, but it still maintains like this heavy, biting, snarling sort of energy and vibe. Like, nothing on here comes across as like too melodic. Like, it doesn't wander into like Gothenburg territory. It's just catchy for the style. Into the Fire of Hell, I think, is a really solid track. It's a little bit more mid-tempo, kind of has that anthemic bolt thrower-esque quality. They throw in some Middle Eastern melodies too, and it's actually like quite effective. None of the songs overstay their welcome. They kind of just get right down to it, generally get a nice catchy bridge. The choruses, generally pretty like anthemic, like it's mostly just, you know, some clever way to repeat the title. It does a lot of the stuff that I want this style to do particularly well. It's, as I said, old school HM2 death metal, no frills, just the fucking saw, and, you know, some cool melodic hooks every now and then. If you're a big fan of, again, any of the bands I brought up, Revel in Flesh, also very comparable in terms of a German band that sounds like a Swedish band, which is exactly what I still think this band is, but yeah, good stuff. Check it out. Mongrel Off the Leash. This is the debut demo or EP from this California-based death metal / hardcore act. I got into it with their EP that came out this year, Baptized in the Gutter, which, again, I am making an EP list on that one I absolutely love. And this is, well, just kind of like a shorter, more raw version of it. It's a bit muddier, but I mean, in terms of what this band does, which is, God, man, this is, again, perfect blend of 90s death metal and 90s metallic hardcore. Like, this is like your 90s Roadrunner fucking death metal playlist meeting up with like your 90s fucking Victory Records playlist. Lots of machine gun heavy death metal riffs, cool tremolos, dive bomb leads, but punchy as hell fucking hardcore breakdowns. The opening track, Dog Complex, right away, like that just has like just such a beefy fucking like, I don't know, old school Earth Crisis breakdown, but is surrounded by death metal riffs. The vocals are kind of somewhere in between. I would say they kind of lean a little bit more towards, you know, the hardcore side, but dude, every song on here, which is only 2 more tracks, Faustian and Off the Leash, absolutely whoops ass. And it whoops ass for the entire duration of this, which is a hearty 9 minutes and 36 seconds. And all the songs are a little bit different too. Faustian, I mean, man, that might be my favorite, because it sounds like a combination of like Destroy the Machines era Earth Crisis, collabing with the Bleeding era Cannibal Corpse. The main riff is very close to the Return to Flesh riff, but it has like, you know, the Forced March kind of groove to it. I don't know, it's hard for me not to like that, because like those are 2 of my favorite songs by 2 favorite bands of mine. And the title track has so much suffocation energy to it. This whole EP absolutely whoops ass. Not quite as good as Baptized in the Gutter, but this is a solid foundational release. Looking forward to hearing a full length from these guys in the future. If you're a fan of, again, like 90s era Roadrunner death metal and 90s era Victory Records, like metallic hardcore, it's both of those on a short EP. So yeah, if that sounds awesome to you, check it out. Protector, Urm the Mad. This is the second album from this German death thrash act, pretty much underground legends in my opinion. I've been a fan of theirs since I heard the album actually that followed this, I believe, A Shedding of Skin, which is honestly, I think one of like the best death thrash albums fucking ever. As I said, I think this band's like super underrated. This is the 2022 reissue on Kill Again Records, and one of the few that I was missing from the earlier years. And super glad I found this, because this is an awesome album. Definitely more raw. I feel like A Shedding of Skin was where they kind of like tightened up their sound and got like a little bit better in the way of production, because this one and Golem, you know, they're solid albums. I think they're great albums, but the production's definitely, again, like just a little dirty sounding. Not necessarily in a bad way, like it definitely has like hallmarks of bands like, you know, early Creator, Possessed, Sadist, I'd even say like early Sepultura too. Furious riffs that kind of go back and forth between like, you know, thrashy machine gun riffs to songs that are definitely leaning more into like the death metal territory, but it's, you know, not quite there yet. Like it's kind of death metal like Possessed, where it's still mostly thrash, if we're being honest. The blast beats are more single kick ones. Like honestly, the blast beats feel very similar to what you would hear on like, you know, Repulsion's Horrified. And vocally, it kind of stays more in a thrash register. The guy has like more of a pronounced scream, like it's just a very thrash delivery. It's pretty much stayed that way throughout the entire run of this band, which this band's, I believe still go, and their last album was killer. But it's the guitar work that I feel like kind of made this like a little bit harder to define. Like, thrash has had blast beats in the past, but the guitar work gotta go back and forth between like just very heavy, very super aggressive thrash to something that sounded a little bit more dark, like the song Decadence. That one has what I would call flat out death metal tremolos. They really don't feel like thrash metal at all. And there are points in here where the riffs get like a little bit grindy, like the last track, Molotov Cocktail. I want to say like a minute long, and honestly sounded like a fucking Repulsion cover. But a lot of this I would say is more anchored in just like super aggressive thrash. Like, I mean, all these tracks I think whoop ass. They just have like a little bit of death metal seasoning on them. I particularly like Nothing Has Changed. That one, I like the fact that there were like some slow menacing sections on there, like kind of like the more mid-tempo Slayer sort of vibe. But a lot of this is just very explosive, very just snarly, mean. I wouldn't necessarily call it like evil, but it definitely has like just a potent aggression to it, and I dig it. But I dig this band. I have a whole bunch of their albums. There's really not a tremendous amount of change in terms of like what they've done over the years, but in terms of being like just grossly consistent and grossly heavy, they're fucking awesome at that. So yeah, if you're a big fan of Creator, Sodom, I mean, honestly, a lot of the Teutonic thrash bands, but also again, Possessed, I'd even throw in like Morbid Saint too. Check this out, and if you like it, just go ahead and check out the rest of their albums, because honestly, there really aren't that many in the way of bad ones, if there are any at all. My opinion though, but yeah, check them out. Motherless, Do You Feel Safe? This is the debut album from the Chicago-based sludge slash doom slash, I mean, there's like a little bit of hardcore in it. Features current and former members of bands like the Atlas Moth, Bear Mace, Black Sights, and November's Doom. And this band was suggested to me by, fellow YouTuber and minister of the Upside Down Church, Jacob. We're both big fans of the Atlas Moth, and he said, hey, have you checked out this band yet? I was like, no. He shot me a link to their Bandcamp. I jammed 2 tracks and was like, fuck yes, let's just do this. So thank you, Jacob, for that recommendation. Before I go into this, I do want to address something, because as soon as I opened this, I noticed that this was on Prosthetic Records, but maybe not, because instead of just Prosthetic Records, it says fuck Prosthetic Records. And I guess there is some beef there. I know that that label and Dragged Into Sunlight have some beef, and there's been some stuff I've heard about their practices, but this band went out of their way to call them out, because as soon as I removed the CD from the tray, there's a note. Congratulations, you have purchased a copy of this record that is not condoned by Prosthetic Records, but is by Motherless. Death to all false record labels. So, bold words right out of the gate, and I definitely want to look more into that. But this is a fucking awesome album. And I hate that I'm listening to awesome albums this late in the year, because we're getting down to writing our lists. I'm almost done with mine, and I feel like I might have to make space. I'm not sure yet. Either way, this is dense, sludgy, caustic. It has the texture of sandpaper, but is somehow very tuneful. This sounds like an album that should have come out on Hydra Head Records like 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Fuck, maybe 30 years ago. It has all the downtrodden, murky, just scathing sludge songs you'd expect from, bands like 16, maybe a little bit of I Hate God. Definitely some Atlas Moth coming over here anyway, because I think it's the vocalist that is the guy from Atlas Moth, and he has a very distinct, raspy, staticky scream. But there's also elements of like crust punk. There's like some stuff in here that reminds me a lot of like early Cave-In, Converge. I'd even throw in bands like Wolf King, Trap Them, and Black Cobra in here. It's just vicious sounding with its just monstrous riffs. The production here was done by Sanford Parker, who I believe he was also in Minsk. And his production on here is awesome. Everything sounds thick and meaty and dense and just kind of dirty. But again, like loaded with catchy melodies like Weaponized Goodwill. That song is like, up-tempo, D-beats, lots of punk and hardcore energy, but it's very melodic. Like the main riff on there is super catchy. They have these like slower, more atmospheric, kind of dingier songs like Darling, You Don't Look Well. And possibly my personal favorite on here, Christian Math, which I don't know what Christian Math is. But those songs are built on lumbering grooves, really catchy, lurching riffs with these cool dissonant accents. Same thing with the song Insect Politics. It's almost like a sludgy, more melodic, like metallic hardcore song. I don't know, like this has its feet in like a lot of different camps here, but it's blended really well. And this whole thing just fucking spoke to me. And an added bonus, there's an unlisted track on the CD version here, and it didn't come up on their Bandcamp, it didn't come up on, you know, the archive, so I had to jam it to find out what it was. And it's one of the most scathing covers of Sepultura's Territory I've ever fucking heard. Yeah, this whole album whoops ass. I have jammed this one probably a little bit more than anything else in this stack just because I got really stuck on it. But yeah, this is just mean, dark, caustic. I would even go as far as saying like a little bit bloodthirsty. Like this sounds like a very fucking angry album. You know, maybe at Prosthetic Records. We're gonna look into that a little bit more. But yeah, if you're a fan of, again, like early Hydra Head, like super heavy albums, again, stuff like Converge and Trap Them, like there's some moments on here that are kind of similar to like later Norma Jean too. And definitely Atlas Moth. Atlas Moth is still very much on here, just, you know, a little bit different. Check this album out. I definitely want to hear more by this band in the future. If it doesn't make my year-end list, know that this is like kind of an honorable mention. It's just damn good. Check it out. Defenestration, Mortal Cremation. This is a compilation of the first demo and first EP from this Canadian death metal act. Before I get into the music, I have to compliment them on their name because their name is really interesting, because defenestration is the act of pushing someone out of a window. It is a very specific word for a very specific action, and I think that's just kind of cool that they chose that as their name. Now, as I said, this is a compilation, but I feel like everything on here is kind of like uniformly mixed, so I don't know if like they just kind of like remastered the demos or they just had the same settings when they recorded their EP, but there isn't a difference between like the demo tracks and the EP tracks in terms of sound quality, which is kind of cool for a compilation, because compilations generally, all right, there's going to be like an inconsistency in terms of production. You don't run into that here. What is on here though is some really interesting death metal. Like it's very old school, it's very groove laden, you know, lots of big riffs, deep gnarly vocals, cool leads, yada yada yada. But I will say, like, in terms of riff work on here, not all of this is like purely death metal riffing. The vocals 100% are, but musically, if you swapped out clean vocals on some of this, you would have something that is maybe a little bit more akin to The Sword or like Spirit Adrift. There's a lot of flat out like groovy heavy metal riffs, old school doom metal riffs kind of worked in here. They do break it up with like some chuggier parts that do feel like a little bit more death metal, but every single song on here has like, again, like these big heavy metal gallops and like really cool melodic harmonies. It's not done to the point where it sounds cheesy, and I think because, you know, they're tuned a little bit lower and it's not like a big bright major chordy driven sort of like thing all the time. They still sound like they fit with the music. It doesn't come across as like power metal with like, you know, death metal vocals, which would be kind of weird. But it gives this album kind of a unique vibe. You can get like some like heavier, thrashier sections on Shrouded in Mystery. Vastum's Rise, that one actually has some blast beats on it, but it always kind of returns to, again, like these heavy metal riffs. And it's not so much I would call it like death doom either, because I mean, there's definitely some doom, like, you know, melodies and such on here. Shrouded in Mystery definitely has some moments that are kind of close, but it just doesn't have like that sort of like, I don't know, like oppressive sort of vibe that like a truly blended death metal and doom metal thing has. Like, it's more or less like, I don't know, like something that's closer to like a doom metal song with death metal vocals on it. Either way, the songwriting here I think is awesome. Like, all these songs are like super catchy. They don't feel cheesy, but they do feel like epic-ish for the style. It still sounds gritty and raw though. I really dig this. I suppose the only thing I can knock it on, and it's really not a knock because the artwork's cool, I just don't feel like it fits what you get on here. Like, you look at this album cover and you expect this to sound like a fucking early Autopsy demo, and it totally doesn't. It's just riff after riff. The songs flow really well. The transitions are smooth as hell. The melodies are sick as hell. Yeah, this is just a killer fucking album. And if you're a big fan of, oh man, again, like, like The Sword with death metal vocals and, oh man, like, I don't know, Spirit Adrift. I mean, there's like a little bit of stuff in here that definitely sounds like, I mean, like, kind of like Autopsy, but not nearly as grimy. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but trust me, just check it out. It's a really solid listen. Sanctorum, Melted and Decomposed. This is the second album from this Spanish death doom, maybe funeral doom act. Features current and former members of bands like Exhumation and Graveyard. Not the Swedish Graveyard, but the Spanish Graveyard that's like flat out death metal. Really awesome death metal band, by the way, in Spain's pretty underrated death metal scene. Anyway, this is another one that I saw people kind of talking about, even though it came out last year. Wanted to check it out. I checked out one track and I mean, it won me over. This is absolutely putrid, festering, slimy, disgusting death doom. Very much in the vein of like Spectral Voice, Evoken, and I would say Disembowelment as well, except it's just very swampy sounding. Like loads of atmosphere, loads of heavy, droning, very muddy riffs. The production on here is absolutely putrid. It's not quite as good as like, you know, Spectral Voice, but I don't mind how muddy it is because it kind of captures a very just kind of grimy aesthetic. Like this sounds like, you know, this is like a copy of a copy of a copy. Like in terms of someone like taping something off of another tape and then, you know, each successive copy is based on that last copy. So it feels kind of like degraded, but in a good way. But musically, this is very like, primordial. Like I feel like every song kind of climbs its way out of a primordial metal ooze and then slowly evolves into just something even more gross. It's monotonous, it creeps, it crawls, it oozes. A lot of just single chord fucking breakdown sections, you know, some harmonies, lots of those like, you know, clean chiming sections and just open cavernous space. Like this sounds like it was recorded in a fucking cavern. You get a good mix of those haunting, clean melodies and just some absolutely woeful, just droning harmonies on, Exultant Dredge of Nameless Tombs. The song titles in here are pretty damn good. Phlegmatic Convulsions, Sadistic Cremation of Emaciated Offal, The Disembodied Grip of Putrescine Stench, that's a mouthful. But yeah, this whole thing is just creepy. Like it screams like this band only plays live shows in like graveyards and shit. The vocals on here are a big part of the atmosphere. There's groans, there's growls, there's whispers. They move around the mix a lot. It kind of ends up feeling like the whole album surrounds you at points. Like basically like everything I think I've ever said about Spectral Voice or, you know, Disembowelment or Evoken, I'm probably going to say about this album because they are very much cut from the same grimy fucking funeral cloth. It does have some solid riffs on it though, like the opening track especially, Abhorrent Excruciation in Reprisal. The last part of that song is this really good chuggy breakdown riff. Nothing too technical, nothing too intricate, but it's just a solid riff. But yeah, this is just absolutely putrid, but in like such a really cool way. If you're a big fan of like any of the bands I brought up and you like your death doom extraordinarily cavernous, very atmospheric, and I don't know, feeling like the sound could generate a stench, yeah, no, this is definitely that. Check this band out, and I definitely want to check out their first album now after this one. Q.A.R.S, or Q.A.R.S. Don't know what this stands for. It is an acronym of some kind. Anyway, this is their debut album, Sex Mass Ritual, which I got in the Metalhead box, and now actually have the album art for it right above me, because I had to fucking look around and only found, well, another album cover of like a demo they put out, or an EP. Anyway, this is blackened death metal. It's very raw, it's very primal. I'm not too huge of a fan of it. The production's not great, the songs are very samey. It's very primal, it's very raw. I guess you could say it has like a very minimalist approach, like almost kind of bordering on war metal where, you know, the riff work really isn't like a big thing, it's just generating kind of like a wall of just dissonant, sizzling noise, and this band definitely does that. The drum work is kind of like a repetitive blast, like you do get some D beats here and there. Vocals are, I mean, they're honestly not that bad, like they're just kind of like groaning, cavernous yells and screams. I think this band is more invested in, I guess, the themes and such with this. Like everything else about this band, outside of the music, seems, you know, kind of cool. Like the album art, honestly, pretty badass. And their stage names are honestly kind of cool too. You have Gustav the Goat, Goat Blood Fornicator, and Succubus Goat, which all kind of comes together like a X-rated Billy Goat's Gruff kind of thing. And they do have a penchant for interesting song titles. Like the opening track is called Crowned in Semen. A crown made out of semen? That's just nuts. I'll see myself out, sorry. Necro-uteral gestation. That's just fun to say. Menstrual blood libation. No. Pleasure the goat, which hopefully doesn't apply to succubus goat. And drugs on Satan, which honestly is the only way to do drugs. Anyway though, a lot of the music though did not stand out to me. Again, it's just this kind of raw, repetitive, just, you know, it's loud and it's obnoxious. The guitars almost sound scratchy, but it wasn't that interesting. I will say the song Super Coven was kind of catchy. I didn't mind that one. And Foul Absolution had some like fun thrashy riffs that were in there. They were just like notably a little bit more like flashy than the rest of it, because a lot of it just feels like a lot of like punky downpicking, which, you know, I love that shit, but this just didn't do very much for me. Still, I mean, if like more raw, punky black metal / Black and Death is for you, I'd say like Profanatica is kind of comparable, but I don't know. Profanatica, I think, is definitely better than this band, but there's some like overlap in terms of their styles, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Check it out. Give it a whirl. Who knows? You might really dig it. This just wasn't for me. Scalding, Nuclear Winter Spell. This is the second album from this Canadian black metal / Black and Thrash act. Now I got this in the Metalhead box, and interestingly enough, I got their debut years ago, Exordium, in the Metalhead box, and I really enjoyed that. So it's kind of cool that they keep up with the same artist. Like, hey, you got something new we can throw in there? And I really enjoyed that debut. But I don't know, I might actually like this one a little bit more. Because while I like the more straightforward black metal approach on the first one, this one I feel just embraces black and thrash even more. And holy fucking riffs, like this is an absolute fucking riff storm. The intro track on here even kind of alludes to it too. Empires of Blood Cascade, which goes into the next track, Into the Mouths of Wolves. It kind of sounds a little bit like Metallica's Blackened with that fade in on the harmony. And then it gets down into very thrashy riffs. A lot of blast beats, but also a lot of thrashy gallops, D beats and such. You know, a lot of like really intricate leads. Honestly, this kind of reminded me like of a Blackened Death version of Revocation. The vocals on here are very similar to Dave Davidson, and while Dave Davidson's a high standard for the guitar work, I don't think they quite hit that mark, but it's really fucking good. The production's also a little bit different here, where, you know, Exordium I feel like was a little bit more atmospheric, a little bit more cold. This, it just has like a thrashy aggression to it, and the guitars, they kind of just dialed up the crunch. Like everything's just got a good crunchy sizzle to it, but it still has enough of that kind of like gainy texture to where, you know, they get down in some like harmonized tremolos and such, some colder, more atmospheric riffs. It still holds on to that black metal aesthetic, but shifting over to like machine gun riffs and like heavy downpicking, it's got that thrash crunch. Now most of these songs are like a solid blend of just black metal and thrash metal. There's some good overlap, but there are songs in here that just purely embody one style, like Dead Stag. That song is a thrashy barn burner. Probably my favorite riff on the album. It's just hooky as fuck. It's just a very driven, very like just punishing, fun fucking song. Great harmonies in it too. Like it's just a super catchy song. But you get down to songs like Onward to Oblivion, which is the big closer in here. Like you get way more of like a dissection, almost like immortal type energy to it. Even on Valley of the Sepulchre, that one is a little bit more like mid-tempo, again, kind of like immortal-ish. Like it just has like just a riffy black metal sort of vibe rather than black and thrash. But this whole album is just riff after riff, really solid transitions. I love the drum work in here. I really dug the first one, but I think this is like kind of the direction, like, because all these songs really fucking pop. Production's a little bit drier and a little bit more compressed, but it works for kind of like letting the riffs breathe on here, because they are really out in the forefront. Vocally, you know, this is, again, pretty solid. Again, it sounds like Dave Davidson, both high and low. But this album, to me at least, doesn't have like any glaring weaknesses, and it definitely shows this band is like, you know, tightening up, evolving their sound, and I dig it. Like, if you love, I mean, again, Revocation is definitely kind of part of it. I would say like a more technical R Noir might be comparable, like, you know, especially in terms of the riff work. I don't know. I strongly recommend checking it out, though. This album is an absolute fucking banger. Bonginator Retrodeath. This is the second album from this Massachusetts-based death metal / hardcore act. I got into them actually when I saw them at FTA in 2023. They put on a pretty solid set while the frontman guitarist was on a questionable amount of acid. Actually, any amount of acid while performing a live show is probably a questionable amount of acid. I ended up picking up their album, The Intergalactic Gorbong of Deathpot, and it was heavy and extraordinarily dumb, about as dumb as the title would have you think it was. And this one might be like a little bit smarter, but it's still dumb. But here's the thing, this band's fucking fun. A lot of it is just like primal old school death metal riffing mixed with like a little bit of brutal death metal and thrash every now and then, and a giant hard-on for the 80s. Like, honestly, there are a fair amount of interlude tracks on here, but here's the thing, I'm not gonna bitch about them because they're honestly like songs. They're like industrial songs or new wave songs, and they're actually pretty clever because a lot of these songs will tie into movies and just various 80s things. Like this has samples from The Thing, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, RoboCop, They Live, and a really obscure B-rated fucking horror movie called Things, which I have only seen snippets of, and I can tell you, it looks like the production cost was about $300, but I gotta say, like, the monsters were kind of impressive for, like, having no budget. But the riffs are heavy, the songs are pretty fun, like, they're not too elaborate, like, it's very meat potatoes. I'm not entirely sure, but I think all the drums are done on an electronic kit. At least it kind of had this repeated sample or, like, this turnover fill where it sounded like an electronic kit, like, it totally did not sound like, you know, just like real drums at all. And a very 80s electronic kit at that. Could have just been a drum pad, I guess, on the actual drums. I don't know, but it kind of made all of it feel like a drum machine. Like I said, the riffs are fun, the songs are fun. You have some fun guest spots from the frontman Colin from Ignominious and one of the frontmen from Belushi Speedball. You got a couple in here that are just straight up humor, like Short Ass Bus and Lunk Alarm, which features, oh god, I forget I don't think it's the Liver King dude, but I don't know, whatever the dude that just like, you know, fucking rants and raves in his car and always ends it with swole as the goal. I really feel like I'm not narrowing it down that much. Pizza Time is pretty much pizza death metal. I mean, that's where you also get, you know, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle samples on it. I also gotta say I like Intruder Organism, not only because it's about The Thing. That's also a pretty solid song. I like the riff changes in that one a little bit more. Like there's some really good like Morbid Angel moments in it. And I also like the outro because it's a litany of quotes from a bunch of different 80s media. And the backdrop of it is like a brighter synth pop song that I feel like could have been at the end of like any John Hughes flick. So as far as like embracing the 80s as much as they could to make it a lot of fucking fun, they did a good job here. Musically though, I mean, it's still just kind of one note, like chuggy death metal, but it's fun. It's not a year ender by any means, but I mean, if you're looking for something that is just, you know, full of fucking laughs and chunky fucking riffs and, you know, kind of moves around like, I don't know, like Jungle Rot and Sanguisugabog. I know Devin was on the last album, so that's kind of comparable. Yeah, check this band out, they're pretty fun. And finally we have Howling Giant, Crucible and Ruin. This is the third album from this Tennessee-based stoner doom / psychedelic rock band. I actually brought this band up in my Tennessee States of Metal with their first album, The Space Between Worlds, which I really dig that album. And again, somehow I just kind of forgot about this band until like this year and seeing this coming out, like, oh, hey, this is pretty cool. And this came out in Halloween, and I've had it on my phone for fucking forever, and I've just been waiting to actually get to it as far as like how backlogged I was with shit to talk about. And that moment has arrived, and this is really fucking good. I'm not sure if I like it as much as the debut, but the songs are solid. In terms of like it being like a hybrid of stoner doom, psychedelic rock, I feel like the ratios aren't entirely like evenly broken up there. When you listen to the production, it doesn't really have like a stoner or doom sort of vibe to it. Like the guitars are definitely big, they're heavy, they're chuggy, especially when you get down to like heavier tracks like Hunter's Mark and the pair of Beholder songs, Beholder 1 Downfall and Beholder 2 Labyrinth. They definitely have a big hearty sound, kind of similar to, you know, say like Mastodon, maybe some of the heavier stuff from Baroness, but it doesn't have that kind of like fuzzy warmth that you expect from stoner metal, nor does it have like the more bone-crushing, kind of oppressive sound you would get from like doom metal. Beholder 2 has like a little bit of that, but I don't know if it was enough to call it like doom. And in terms of psychedelic stuff, it doesn't get like trippy, like, you know, Monster Magnet or anything, but these guys write excellent songs. And if I was going to compare them to bands like, you know, Baroness would be in there, ASG, and there's also touches of like 70s prog. One of the biggest strengths of this band in terms of melody are the vocals. These guys are excellent at harmonized vocals, and they just kind of, again, like have like that very classic 70s prog sound, like the vocal harmonies you expect in Yes or like Gentle Giant. But apply that to like a band that, you know, has its roots in like stuff like Mastodon, Baroness, even like some like grunge and post-grunge, like 90s alternative stuff too. Because these guys are all about solid riffs and big hooks. Hunter's Mark, I think, might be like the perfect balance of like good, heavy, chuggy riffs and just an unbelievably catchy chorus. Same thing with Scepter and Scythe, though that one I think has like a little bit more prog rock to it, but again, big hooky chorus with these big vocal harmonies and sort of a vibe that, I don't know, like it doesn't ever feel like too dark or too oppressive. In fact, a lot of this, I don't know, it feels like it's, I don't know, like it kind of like celebrating life's splendor. Like it's not bright, it's not dark, it's just like, I don't know, warm midday sun and just good fucking jams. And the atmosphere and like proggy vibe, like this could be at home in, I don't know, Middle Earth or, you know, on some ancient alien planet or on a space station. Like it kind of has that vibe. There's really cool instrumentals on here. Lesser Gods in particular, it's just an awesome proggy jam. And the Observatory is a nice soft refrain before you get into the very heavy Beholder 2 Labyrinth. Archivist in particular, another solid song. I like the fact that that one gets like a little bit more technical. There's a moment in there like in a breakdown that honestly it doesn't feel like it would be far removed from like a BT Bam album. But that one also has like probably the most psychedelic atmosphere on the album too. I don't know, I really dig this band and I need to check out their second album now because, well, I have this one and the first one. It just makes sense to get that second album now. But also because I have a feeling it's also really good. If you're a big fan, again, of, again, like ASG, Baroness, Mastodon, if any of that sounds good to you, strongly recommend this album. Again, another one that's kind of been on the cusp of being on my list. I don't think it's going to quite make it, but yeah, consider it an honorable mention because this is damn good. And that'll do it for yet another collection update. And this next one, hopefully, will be the last one I do before getting down to my year-end list. I'm going to try to bullet train it a little bit, but I want to get it done because I want to make sure I've listened to everything that I've bought before making my list. And there are most definitely some key albums I want to listen to in this next one because this next one's going to have a lot of new releases as well. Either way, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships that are only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members only live stream, which we will probably do one a little bit after the new year because we want to do like an all-inclusive one for the new year. No sense in putting that behind a paywall because you guys are all awesome, but we'll still definitely do a members only one a little bit after that. Either way, memberships are the main way to support the channel, and if you'd like to help out there, there's a join button down there for you to smite, punch, drop an elbow on, throw a brick at. Do whatever you feel like doing to it. As long as it registers that you joined, then you did it right. And of course, thank you guys so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that stuff. It's amazing that we are through yet another year here in the channel. We are on to, year 7 of being a channel, which is just fucking crazy. But we 100% couldn't have done it without you. You guys are the main reason why we are still a channel. Thank you guys so much for literally everything you guys do. Tons of content coming in the future. January, I'm sure, is going to have some fun videos for sure. But one more big thank you for you guys because you guys are absolutely amazing, and we will catch you later.